Sue?
Mike!
Sue?
Mike, where are you?
Ah! The horror!
Ho, ho, ho!
Merry Christmas! Hi, everybody.
Hey there.
Welcome back to The Horror.
Woo!
My name is Michael O'Rourke,
And I'm Sue Slachter.
and in this video, we'll be going over Black Christmas,
Woo!
the original 1974 classic.
Hell yeah. It's Christmas break, and a group of sorority sisters are celebrating with a festive party. However, little do they know that a murderous intruder has slipped into the house unnoticed. Shortly after, an obscene phone call sets the women on edge. It's from a man named Billy, and what he's saying doesn't entirely sound pleasant. This event sends into motion a string of grisly murders. Black Christmas is credited with pioneering the slasher genre, paving the way for other classics, like Halloween.
So I enjoy this movie quite a bit.
Hell yeah.
I like it, and I don't like it because of the killer. The murder part of this movie is kind of whatever to me. I like it because of the characters, and the sorority sisters, and Mrs. Mack, and just how they interact with each other and their personalities.
There's really interesting characters in this film, and I feel like they're all, very dynamic and bright and interesting and unique. The killer, we don't really get a lot from him at all. Like, there's zero motivation.
It's just a bunch of prank calls, and then he kills a couple people. We don't know why. There's no reason for it. He doesn't really have his own personality. He seems to have multiple personalities.
Yeah.
Because you hear different voices on the phone.
What your mother and I must know is, where did you put the baby, Betsy?
You've got the wrong number.
Where did you put Agnes, Billy?
And one sounds like his mom, one sounds like a kid,
Yeah.
one sounds like himself, and it's just really weird. Like, you can tell he's just a crazy, messed up person.
Yeah. You hear the name Billy, you hear the name Agnes, but honestly, there's a lot that's said on the phone that I don't entirely understand.
Yeah.
After the initial phone call, that came through pretty loud and clear. I'm not really sure that we can actually include this because of YouTube's community guidelines.
Yeah, we're not doing that.
Oh, why don't you go find a wall socket and stick your tongue in it? That'll give you a charge.
But after the initial really obscene phone call, there's so much going on with the strange voices and what's being said that basically the only thing that I'm able to pick out is that Billy does occasionally repeat things that have been said in the house by the sorority sisters. So that's important. But a lot of it just kind of gets lost in garbledy translation.
Yeah, and the plot really is just revolving around the sorority sisters and them trying to find their lost friend who is actually dead. And they look everywhere, except the attic.
Except the attic.
Which I think is hilarious.
Why wouldn't you check the attic?
Yeah, it makes no sense. Why wouldn't they check the attic?
I really don't know.
Oh, our friend is missing. We're going to send search teams out to search the park.
But we're not going to completely search our huge sorority house.
I wonder if they looked in the basement
Go
or
figure.
anywhere else either.
She's not in the basement. I don't know where else she could be.
Hey, quiet! It's him again! The Mona!
This film has a fantastic cast, and they're the ones who really brought the characters to life in the best way possible. Margot Kidder as Barb. You can't beat that.
Oh, come on, this is a sorority house, not a convent.
She is most famous for portraying Lois Lane in the Superman movies.
There's a certain species of turtle that can screw for 3 days without stopping.
Sorry, beg your pardon?
You don't believe me, do you? Well, I mean, how could I make something like that up? No, really, they just 3 days, 24 hours a day. Boom, boom, boom. I'm lucky if I get 3 minutes.
I like to imagine this is just Lois Lane's college days. And that she was just this crazy, and then as soon as she got a reporter job, she calmed down a little bit. Because she's still really weird in the Superman movie. But not this weird.
Not this weird. The thing about Barb is that she's got a real problem with alcohol. And some of it is funny, and some of it is actually really disturbing. I thought that it was interesting that for a film made in 1974, there's actually some really intense themes. Alcoholism is one of those examples. I mean, she humiliates herself. She humiliates her sorority sisters. She spouts some pretty weird stuff off. And then you even notice some little Easter eggs like, hey, the wreath on her door even has little bottles of liquor on it. She likes to get sloshed. She even gives alcohol to a young kid. There are kids in their house to see Santa Claus, and she's just like, drink up, little boy.
Mrs. Mack also is always hiding bottles of liquor everywhere in the house.
Yeah.
And always getting a drink in, and her performance is hilarious.
Marion Waldman, yeah, I thought she was great. She was so funny as Mrs. Mack, and I really liked her general attitude of, I may be the house mother, but I'm not here to control these teenagers.
You're supposed to be responsible for the morals of every girl in this goddamn house.
Well, and there's a big theme in this movie about traditional values versus like newer values.
Yeah.
Because you have like Mrs. Mack running the house, and she just lets the girls basically do whatever they're going to do.
Be who they are.
You know, they're college kids. They're going to do all kinds of crazy stuff, whatever. And then you have the father of the missing girl who comes in, and he's very traditional and
super uptight.
He can't believe the things he sees, and he doesn't approve of certain things.
Here, kitty. Oh, God damn it, Claude, you little prick.
And then you have the relationship of Jess and Peter, where Jess is dating this slightly older guy, and it turns out she's pregnant. She wants to get an abortion, and he doesn't want to let that happen, and he flips out over it.
Yeah.
He's like, don't kill the baby. Like, I can't let you do that. And I'm surprised they put something as heavy as abortion into this movie. It has a lot of lighthearted moments, but then there's other elements like that are like pretty heavy.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it is because it was a product of its time, being made in the early 70s. A lot of these things were at the forefront of a lot of social issues at the time, especially with Roe v. Wade being so new. And so I think this movie did want to explore some of those things and provide possible motivations to maybe who the killer is.
Maybe.
Because Peter is a suspect.
I was really impressed that this early slasher film dealt with such hard issues like that. Again, it talks about alcoholism. It talks about abortion. It talks about emotionally abusive relationships, like the relationship with Jess and Peter, and with some of the girls' parents. I think that it's really interesting that this film brought up these type of topics that are still important today as well, but you almost never see anything that heavy in a horror movie at this point. I really appreciated that the filmmakers included these kind of tough themes because it made it a much more well-rounded movie. One of the sorority sisters, Phil, is played by Andrea Martin, and I thought she did a really good job in the movie. I like that even though she has a smaller role, I feel like her characterization really comes out. You know, maybe she's looked at as being like kind of a nerdy girl or something like that, but she doesn't have a problem with it. She kind of embraces it, and she actually comes back in the 2006 reboot of Black Christmas to play Mrs. Mack. We'll talk about that next week.
So one way this movie was really pioneering for the time was the use of POV shots for the killer, where you don't see the killer in this particular movie, but you do see his POV, which has been used to death
Ad nauseum.
in many slasher movies ever since. At the time, I'm sure it was probably like, oh, like we're seeing through the eyes of the killer? Oh my God. That's kind of daring.
Whoa.
I enjoyed the way they used it. It wasn't too over the top. They did it sparingly, so you weren't just constantly seeing that for half the movie. And it was nice to see his little glimpses when he's hiding out in the attic with the bodies.
Yeah.
Just his weird stuff he's doing.
Just chilling with some bodies.
Just
totally
chilling.
normal.
One thing I noticed about this movie is that it's not that gory.
It really isn't. I kind
Yeah.
of thought that was cool too, because again,
Yeah.
it's considered like the beginning of the slasher genre, but there's not a ton of gratuitous violence, actually. You don't really see a lot of it.
Yeah, the actual violent acts, you don't really see at all. And then when you do see the aftermath of like bloody bodies or something, it's usually not too much, and it's usually a super quick cut, and then they cut away, and then they focus on something else.
Man, the police suck in this movie. It's so bad, and at times it's also used for some great comedy, but the kind of ugly part of it is that when the sorority sisters try to report that the first friend, Claire, is missing, they don't take it seriously at all. They really don't seem to care, and it's it sucks. Like, what's wrong with them? There is a detective, played by John Saxon, who does take it more seriously later on, but they keep showing different scenes of the police station, and there is all kinds of tomfoolery happening. Like, the main cop who's working the front desk, he's a moron.
He's not smart.
No, he's not smart. At one point, Barb even teases him, mocks him with a phone number and a sexually suggestive word. And he doesn't get it at all. And the rest of the police station is mocking him and laughing at him. And all he can say is,
I know. Something dirty, ain't it?
he's so dumb. I'm not sure why they included this, except for, just to have some comic relief. And again, maybe to just like poke fun at cops.
Nash, I don't think you could pick your nose without written instructions.
Yeah, because it's funny.
Yeah, but it's like, they're just a bunch of doofuses.
Well, and they kind of show that this is like a smaller area without a whole lot of crime. And I don't think the cops are used to anything serious actually going on.
Probably.
So they're not prepared.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they get all kinds of calls of like students who have disappeared, and probably because they're drunk, sleeping it off somewhere.
Yeah.
And, so they don't seem very concerned. And I think that's a lot of why their reaction was so slow at first.
I don't know when we can get a man on it. Probably just one of your boyfriends playing a little joke.
I think you're really onto something about them not being used to dealing with a lot of really hard crime that happens in the town. Because at one point they organize a search party with people in the town, and the townsfolk, a couple of them end up peering into the window at the sorority house, and they scare the hell out of Phil, and she's like, whoa, oh my God, what's happening? And it's just these two doofusy sort of townspeople.
We was just wondering if you noticed anything suspicious here tonight.
Oh, no, sorry.
Yeah, well, you just keep your doors and windows locked, and you'll be safe.
Okay.
You understand?
Thanks a lot, I will.
And remember, there might be others from the search party around, so don't be afraid. We'll be around to see that you're safe.
Good enough. Thank you very much.
Just remember to lock those doors and windows out, eh?
Okay,
then.
Bye.
Going door to door, and it's like, okay. And it's just so ridiculous and funny and like just a little over the top how their attitudes are. But again, I appreciate that in this film that is, dealing with much more difficult topics, that they do insert a little bit of purposeful comedy into it too.
Ho, 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 shit.
Yeah, that's one thing I appreciate with horror movies like this too, is where they do have heavier ideas, but then they do have a lot of more lighthearted moments too. It really gives like a good mix to the movie.
Little balance.
Yeah, I'm not just watching like, oh, it's all serious all the time. No levity. Or it's just like so overly jokey that I can't take anything seriously. So I like that mix in this movie.
I agree. They do a really good job. I like this film a lot. I can certainly understand why it's considered a classic. We mentioned that there are obscene phone calls, and this does happen throughout the movie. And so at some point, the police start trying to track the calls. Where are these obscene calls coming from? And you hear something that changes film history.
The caller is in the house.
The calls are coming from the house.
This becomes so infamous and is used in many other films in the 70s and the 80s and their respective reboots in the 90s and 2000s. But this is the first film where that line is used. And I'm sure that it was so scary, because now with cell phones, the call is coming from inside the house. Yeah, who cares? Everybody's got a cell phone. This was not the case at that time. It was really unique to have more than one landline in a home. Even in something like a sorority house, it would have been, sort of special.
There you are.
Overall, I enjoyed this movie. I like the simplicity of the plot. Even the subplots had good setups and payoffs. Like everything connected with each other at the end. I thought it was really well written. I like the dialogue. I like the humorous moments. I like the way it was filmed with the POV killer shots, and had some suspenseful moments.
Yeah.
I don't think there's really a whole lot wrong with this movie that I could point out. It's a classic, and it's a classic for a reason.
For sure. I really like this movie too, and I'm happy that I got the opportunity to watch it again so that we could review it, because it's really good.
Well, we will see you next time for more reviews.
Bye, peeps!
Bye!
No, really, they just 3 days, 24 hours a day.